They called Plainfield, Wisconsin, a quiet town. Rows of faded barns, church bells on Sundays, and a sky so wide it seemed to swallow every sound. But beneath that stillness hid a man whose secrets would change the meaning of horror forever. His name was Edward Theodore Gein, and the world would come to know him as the Monster of Plainfield. The early life, the making of a monster. Ed Gein grew up under the rule of a woman who feared sin more than she feared death. His mother, Augusta Gein. She preached that every woman was wicked, that the world was corrupt, and that only she could keep her sons pure. His father drank to escape. His older brother questioned her, and Ed simply obeyed. When Augusta's voice filled the farmhouse, it was law. When she prayed, Ed listened, and when she called other women temptresses, Ed learned to look away. By the time Ed turned 40, death had claimed everyone around him. His father first, then his brother Henry in a mysterious fire, and finally, Augusta, his only friend, his only love. When she died in 1945, something inside Ed Gein broke. Plainfield falls silent. Neighbors described him as shy, odd, but polite. He lived alone on the family farm, a crumbling house surrounded by frozen fields. Yet behind those walls, the rooms he once shared with his mother were sealed off like a shrine. Locals said he spent nights reading anatomy books, old adventure magazines, and stories about Nazi atrocities. Sometimes they'd see a faint glow from his window at 2 a.m., and the silhouette of a man moving through the shadows, alone, always alone. The night of the crime. Bernice Worden disappears. November 16, 1957. A light snow had started to fall over Plainfield. Inside Worden's hardware store, 58-year-old Bernice Worden tended the counter. Around closing time, a single receipt sat on the register, antifreeze. The next morning, her son Frank returned from a hunting trip to find blood on the floor and tracks leading out the back door. The last name in the receipt book read Ed Gein. Sheriff's deputies drove out to Ed's farmhouse. The lights were off. The door was locked. They entered through the woodshed, and what they found would haunt them forever. Discovery of the House of Horrors. Hanging from the ceiling was Bernice Worden's body. Nearby, a table set for one, and beyond that, what looked like masks. Not Halloween masks. Faces. Each room was worse than the last. Skulls turned into bowls. Chairs wrapped in something that should never be fabric. Boxes filled with bones. And in the kitchen, a heart, inside a bag, next to the stove. When they found Ed later that night at a neighbor's house, he was calm, almost gentle. He admitted everything in the same soft voice he used when greeting townsfolk at the grocery store. At first, investigators assumed he was part of something larger, a cult maybe, or a ring of grave robbers. But the truth was lonelier. Ed Gein had been robbing graves for years, women who reminded him of his mother. He told police he read death notices in the newspaper, then dug them up under moonlight. Sometimes he took parts, sometimes entire bodies. He claimed he wanted to build a woman's suit, to feel close to his mother again. When questioned about missing tavern owner Mary Hogan, Ed smiled and said, "She's down at my place." The deputies thought he was joking, until they found her remains in a paper bag. Forensic teams cataloged every object in the house. Each one told a fragment of Ed's obsession. A mask made from a woman's face, a lampshade of human skin, a belt lined with what police could barely bring themselves to name. Psychiatrists later called it a pathological mourning, a grief so powerful it twisted into imitation. Ed wanted not to harm women, he said, but to become them. to crawl back into the comfort of his mother's presence. When asked about the heart near the stove, he shrugged. "It wasn't hers," he whispered. "I'd never touch hers." The courtroom was silent as the judge read the charges. Murder, desecration, insanity. Ed Gein stood small, pale, hands folded. He pled not guilty by reason of insanity. Doctors declared him schizophrenic and unfit for trial. For more than a decade, he remained in a psychiatric hospital. When he was finally deemed competent in 1968, he faced justice again. The verdict: guilty, but legally insane. He spent the rest of his life behind hospital walls, gardening, reading, and quietly following the lives of the people who portrayed him on screen. Aftermath: the legacy of terror. Ed Gein died in 1984 from lung cancer. He was buried beside his mother in Plainfield Cemetery. Over the years, his headstone was stolen, chipped away, and eventually removed for good. People still leave flowers, and sometimes notes. But his shadow didn't stay buried. His crimes inspired Psycho's Norman Bates, the Texas Chain Saw Massacre's Leatherface, and the Silence of the Lambs' Buffalo Bill. From one isolated farmhouse, horror itself was reborn, not as a monster from a distant land, but as the quiet neighbor next door. Plainfield never truly recovered. The townsfolk still speak softly when they pass the old Gein property. Some swear they see a faint light flicker inside the ruins at night. And if you listen closely to the wind that crosses those empty Wisconsin fields, you might just hear Augusta Gein's voice, still calling for her son. What do you think drives a person to commit horrors like these? Madness, grief, or something darker that lies within us all? If you found this story chilling, subscribe for more true tales of real-world darkness. New mysteries every week. And remember, evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like the man next door.